Hi friend, I'm Renee and welcome to my Kudos Kitchen, where today I am joined by my husband Mark on the camera.
Hello everybody.
And he's going to be filming, and he is now officially a part of the Kudos Kitchen team. So welcome Mark, and let's do something.
Looking forward to it. What are we making today?
Actually, today we're going to be making a recipe out of this cookbook I recently got. It's called Crocker's Lost Recipes. I was flipping through and I found this really good looking recipe for hummingbird upside down cake.
Sounds delicious.
It does, and it looks good too. And I'm not going to do anything different than what the recipe states, which is unusual for me if you've been here before, but that's the plan. So I'm just going to stick to the recipe, and we're going to be making this cake. The ingredients called for in the cake portion of this recipe is a half a cup of butter plus 2 tablespoons, and I'll be melting this in the microwave. Here are the 2 tablespoons, and that calls for it melted. And a third a cup of packed brown sugar. Here's my brown sugar. And pineapple slices. What I need to do is cut these in half. They have been drained already. And then what you need to do is save the liquid that is in the can, because we'll be using that for another portion of the recipe. 1 box of Betty Crocker's Super Moist Yellow Cake Mix. The reserved pineapple juice. Here it is, like I was showing you. 3 eggs. Some ripe bananas. I'll be mashing these. We need about, 1 cup. So 2 very ripe bananas, some ground cinnamon, and ground nutmeg. And for the filling we need, 1 can of sweetened condensed milk and some of the reserved pineapple juice. So let's begin. Oh, by the way, if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and consider liking and subscribing to my channel, because I sure would appreciate it. So the first thing the recipe tells you to do is spray a 12-cup Bundt pan liberally with baking spray. And they say specifically the kind with the flour in it, so that's this. That's what we do. And then you pour 2 tablespoons of that melted butter, and I'm just eyeballing it, into the bottom of the Bundt pan. And then the recipe tells you to sprinkle brown sugar over the butter in the Bundt pan. Try to get an even layer of it. And I know it said like a third a cup or a half a cup, but here's where I am making this recipe my own. I'm going to wing it and do as much as I think looks good. Okay, I would say that's a pretty good layer. And next, those pineapple slices, cut them in half after they've been drained, and lay them evenly into the bottom of the Bundt pan with the butter and the brown sugar. And as you know, an pineapple upside down cake, these slices, even though they're on the bottom of the pan right now, when the cake is baked and we flip them over, the pineapple slices will be on the top, and it'll look very, very pretty. I'm going to try and squeeze one more in. Here's what it looks like, and then I'm going to set this aside and we will make the cake portion. How's it look to you, Mark? Any questions so far?
It's going to be delicious.
Any questions so far?
No.
Okay. And now I'm going to mash those 2 bananas, those 2 ripe bananas. I like to use a pastry blender for this. It makes quick work of it. You can also use a fork, or I guess like a potato masher would work fine too, but I do like using the pastry blender. Okay, and now for the cake itself. So the 1 box of the Betty Crocker Yellow Cake Mix calls for the 3 eggs, and I'm going to put them in before beating because that works fine. Okay, it's best to have your eggs at room temperature if you can. And we're going to add a half a cup of the reserved pineapple juice. And we need 2 tablespoons left over. I believe it's, 2 teaspoons left over for the icing after it's done. So we'll pour most of this in there. And now to that we add that mashed banana that we just did. Now we grate in some nutmeg. You can use a ground nutmeg too that you already have bought at the store, but I like to grate fresh nutmeg. I think it gives a A little bit better flavor. You don't need a whole lot. A little goes a long way. And we need some ground cinnamon.
How much?
Good question, Mark. 1.5 teaspoons. I just eyeball. That looks good. Cut. And now I'm going to use my hand mixer. You could use a stand mixer. You could even use just a whisk if you really, feel like a good workout. But I'm going to use my hand mixer and just blend it all up until it's nicely combined. The recipe calls for blending it for 2 minutes on medium speed. So let's do that. All right, there we go. That's been about 2 minutes on medium speed. I did go ahead and scrape down the bowl. And now I'll knock off the beaters. And now it's time to pour this batter into the Bundt pan. And now we pour the batter evenly into the Bundt pan over the pineapple, butter, and brown sugar.
Okay, I'm recording.
Now the recipe doesn't tell you this, but I like to do it when I'm baking a cake, is to pound the cake pan on the counter, because what that'll do is the friction will bring the air bubbles from the cake batter up to the top.
That's interesting.
Yes, it is. It's one of the first things I learned about cake baking way back when. Not that I'm an expert cake baker, but I think it's important to do. Can you see those little bubbles, Mark?
Yeah, a little bit.
Can you see them come up to the surface?
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of fun. Takes out your aggression. So into the preheated 350 degree oven for 40 to 45 minutes. Here's the cake, hot out of the oven. It was in there about 45 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and test with a skewer to make sure that it comes out clean. And it does, in fact, come out clean. But I have a disclaimer here, so don't go anywhere just yet. As I'm putting the cake into the oven, it was in the oven about 5 minutes time, I noticed as I'm cleaning up, I forgot to add the remaining melted butter into the cake mix. So what I did, and you can always fix mistakes, hopefully if they're not too far gone, is I then took the cake out of the oven. It had already started to bake partially, a little bit around the edges. I went ahead and I poured the butter all the way around the Bundt pan, and I took my spatula and I mixed it in. So hopefully we won't have any issues. And it looks fine. I mean, it looks really good and it smells really good. So I'm going to say that was a good enough fix. So now we let this cool for 15 minutes and we move on to the next step. Okay, so while the cake is cooling, like I said, it has to cool for 15 minutes. We go ahead and make what they call the filling. But what it actually is this is a poke cake. And I know you're familiar with what a poke cake is. It's where you poke the cake after it's baked and then you pour again, what they're calling the filling over the warm cake. And then it goes in the holes and flavors the entire cake. So this is 1 can of sweetened condensed milk for the filling and a 1/4 cup of the reserved pineapple juice from the sliced pineapples. And I'm going to go ahead and whisk this together until it's all mixed well. And then when the cake is a little bit cooler, we're going to poke the holes and pour this sweet filling over the cake as if the cake's not enough. Why not add more sweetness, right guys? All right, the cake has cooled about 15 minutes. So now what Betty says to do is go ahead and poke holes with a wooden spoon about halfway down through the cake, but don't go all the way to the bottom. She says wipe the spoon off if needed, but I mean, yeah, there's a little residual cake on the bottom, but it's not doing anything crazy, so don't need to do that necessarily, in my opinion. Okay, so there's the holes, and then we will go ahead and pour, and this looks like an awful lot of what they call filling, but we're going with it. We're going to pour all this over the warm cake and into the holes. Looks pretty good. I mean, what's not to like? Pineapple juice, sweetened condensed milk, cake, brown sugar, butter, and then it says to go ahead and refrigerate the cake, which is what we'll do for 2 hours before we turn it out and then glaze it. So it'll be nice and cool at that point. So there we go. What do you think, guys? What do you think, Mark? What does that look like to you?
Looks like it's going to be delicious.
Do you think so? It looks kind of weird to me. I mean, it looks good knowing what it is, but right now it looks a little weird in my eyes. It's been 2 hours in the refrigerator, and then what you need to do is run, this is an offset spatula, around the edge of the cake, just to loosen it up, because don't forget there is brown sugar and butter and sticky sauce, and then also around the inside. And hopefully this is all it needs is to release the cake from the pan. Cake platter or cake stand or whatever you're going to use to serve it on. And then we're going to do the quick-o flip-o, and hopefully it comes out without a hitch. Do it with intention. 1, 2, 3. And presto changeo. I heard the suction, I heard it release, so let's take off the lid and ooh, see how she looks. What do you think? See,
Looks delicious.
you can see the pineapple slices around the outside, or the bottom rather, which is now the top, and it looks really good. And you can tell just by looking at it how moist this cake is going to be once it is sliced. So we'll make the glaze next. Chop up some pecans for garnish, and then I'm going to toss them in a dry skillet to toast. Okay, now we make the glaze, and what that will be is, it calls for 1/2 cup of powdered sugar, so I'm going to do a little bit more than that. Okay, and to the confectioner's sugar, powdered sugar, we're going to add about 2 teaspoons of pineapple juice. And whisk these together, and you're looking for a thick-ish glaze. If it's too runny, it's going to run right off the cake. And if it's too thick and globby, it won't move at all. So you don't want that either. Okay, here's the consistency I like. As you can tell, it's thick, but not too thick that it doesn't run, and it's not too thin that it just immediately runs off. There's a little bit of a lag. So now we drizzle this all over the top of the cake. Okay, after the glaze, what I'm going to do is just take some of those extra pineapple slices, and as a little bit of garnish, add them around the cake. And now to sprinkle on the toasted pecans. And I think I'm also going to garnish the top with a little bit of fresh mint from the garden. So there we go. I'll put a little mint on it, just a little green for brightness and freshness to make it look more inviting. What do you think, Mark? Does that help?
Yeah.
I think
It's a
so
little
too.
color.
Definitely. Just a little sprig in each corner.
Looks good.
Thanks. Thanks, Betty. All right, so here is Betty Crocker's Hummingbird upside down cake. Looks really good, and it smells really good too. So it's actually a poke cake, as you saw before, if you watched the whole video. And in just a little bit, Mark is going to take a taste test. So we'll see what it looks like in the center and how he likes the taste.
Here we go.
Nellie's cheering you on. So, I mean, is it tender? Is it flavorful?
Very moist
Very moist.
and flavorful.
Okay, what do you taste the most?
Brown sugar, maybe?
Really?
Yeah.
Any banana?
Oh, yeah, banana. That's it.
Okay,
I knew there was something I couldn't put my finger on.
sure. Do you taste any of the pineapple or not so much?
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit, okay.
Well, now I'm going to actually eat some pineapple.
Okay, cool. If you had to rate it, which you do, on a scale of 1 to 5, what would you say?
Oh, definitely a 5.
Seriously?
Yeah, I might have another piece after we're done filming.
Oh, okay. Way to go, Betty. If you like this video, please consider liking and subscribing to our channel, Kudos Kitchen by Renee. Actually, it's now by Renee and Mark. Anyways, and if you like this recipe, please don't hesitate. I'm going to leave the description and the entire recipe, the full recipe, in the description box below, so you can get that. And if you like this recipe, I think I've said that 5 times, please visit my website for other delicious recipes, and you can find me at kudoskitchenbyrenee.com.